Now back to more hard and heavy talk. Trunk Nation.
I know exactly what we're doing. Don't you worry.
This is Rad with host Eddie Trunk.
All right, it's Eddie Trunk, Sirius XM, Faction Talk 103, and of course the Sirius XM app. And man, I don't know how I've been doing this 40 years, and this guy's been doing it almost as long, and we have not connected really until now. I'm super thrilled to welcome to the show from Green Day, Billie Joe Armstrong. Billy, how are you, buddy?
I'm really good. Just I'm hanging out. I'm actually in London, England right now, so just visiting with family.
You have family there, huh?
Yeah. But one of my sons moved out here, so just been spending a lot more time here. So it's great. It's a great city.
Am I wrong on this? But didn't you guys record some Green Day records in London too?
Yeah, the new record, Saviors. The majority of the record was recorded at place Rack Studios, RAK. And it was just nice to get out of being in LA and kind of doing it the same way that we've been doing it before. So it was a great experience, just kind of feeling like it's just a new place, new territory.
So many bands, of course, there's so much incredible music that comes from England, and so many bands kind of channel that when they go there. And you guys having so much of a punk influence, I'm sure there was a lot of that on you too. Some of those British bands you probably grew up loving, just that DNA being from that country's got to have some sort of imprint, I would think, when you're there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it even goes further back than like the late 70s punk. I mean, it's like, recording, like with it, like the Who and the Kinks,
sure.
and all, like a lot of the British Invasion, and then and obviously the glam stuff with Bowie and T-Rex, and so it's Sweet, and so it's like I'm a huge British rock fan, so it was just great to be able to kind of breathe in that air and to see what happens.
There's so much I want to talk to you about because, and I don't know how much time we have or you have, but because this is, again, so overdue. And, but when you talk about this music, I mean, the easy thing for people to say about your band Green Day is that it's, a punk band. I mean, that's the easy thing. And sure, there's a lot of that in there, and I'm sure that's a big part of the makeup. But I got to tell you, in all the years and decades of listening to Green Day, to my ears, I hear a lot of those influences on the stuff you just said that maybe aren't so apparent, whether it's Bowie, whether it's T-Rex. I hear a lot of power pop. I'm a big power pop guy, and I hear a lot of power pop mixed in with what you do also. So is all that in the stew of the stuff that you were into when you started writing these songs?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've always been a huge Cheap Trick fan.
There you go.
Which is like, those are that's the ultimate power pop band,
Right.
And a lot of like a more obscure kind of power pop that I'm a huge like audiophile when it comes to. I'm always searching YouTube for the one single that sounds great, but that like bands that have never done anything after that. So, but the Raspberries, like
there you
a lot
go.
of, a lot, and like a lot of like, gosh, like some of the early Motley stuff I've always thought had this like kind of, the first record
totally.
was like
Too Fast for Love,
Public
yeah.
Enemy, Too Fast for Love, and God, the song Public Enemy #1. I mean, that's a pop jam, that's just, but it's also really dark and satanic.
Right. It's funny you mentioned the Raspberries because the Raspberries are actually, like, so for me growing up, it was really, I always cite Kiss as the band that changed my life, because they did. It was like they were the band that consumed me at 12 years old and just set me off on being a total rock nerd. But there was actually a band before that, and it was hearing a song called Go All the Way by the Raspberries when I was even younger, and in the backseat of my parents' car, and it came on the AM radio, and I swear to you, Billy, every time I talk about it, still hair stands up, because it was this game-changing moment for me where I heard this Raspberry song, and it was this crunchy, distorted guitar riff that then juxtaposed into this beautiful melody, and that right there was like the first proper rock music I ever heard, and that slamming, crunchy guitar riff and busy drums against this beautiful vocal and melody was like my whole world opened up to that. And the Raspberries were so important and so influential on so many people that I don't think people realize what those 4 records did and the blueprint it laid. Even for bands like Motley, who covered a Raspberry song, or Kiss, who were huge fans, or Cheap Trick, who were fans. They really were an important band, even though they didn't really become huge in America.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the same sort of experience, I think, with Cheap Trick. I think one thing about Robin Zander is I think he is like the greatest rock singer of all time. Yeah, like he can do everything. I mean, he can be Lennon, he can be McCartney, he can be Bon Scott, he could be Johnny Rotten, he can do everything. And it's like, that just shows you, I mean, and also he can just sing something so beautiful. Like, I mean, I love the song Tonight It's You. It's probably one of my favorite Cheap Trick songs of all time. Like, the way, I mean, his range is stunning. He's just a beautiful singer.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And, like you, I'm sure, you being in the business all the time, it's surreal to get to know these people and be able to call them friends over the decades and hear those stories and hear about them writing or recording those songs. And I just saw Robin recently, and every time I see Cheap Trick actually, about 10 years ago, they let me pick their entire set list. And they played it. This is a true story. Maybe it was more like 15 years ago. They played a show in Pennsylvania, and I was on tour with Aerosmith and Cheap Trick a while ago, and I would always badger those guys when they went to the stage in a fun way and be like, hey, you got to do Tonight It's You, or, Clock Strikes 10, or whatever it was. And and one day Rick just looks at me, and they were about to go on stage, and he looks at me and he goes, you know what? When we play a headline show, why don't you just pick all the songs? And I was like, yeah. I go, all right, I'll do that. So sure enough, they're playing a headline show in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I get a call from Rick, and he says, listen, our tour manager's going to call you and, send the set list in. I said, Rick, stop wasting my time. There's no way you're going to do this. You'd never rehearse the songs. He goes, we've never rehearsed in our lives. I said, there's no way the stuff I'm going to pick from your catalog that you're going to be able to do on like 3 hours notice. He goes, try us. Sure. I said, don't make me do this and waste my time. He goes, do it. So I went, I swear to you, I could text you the photo of the set list, and they all signed it to me. I came up with 15 of these deep, obscure Cheap Trick songs. I sent them in. I get to the show a few hours later. I walk backstage. They come out of the dressing room holding the printout of the set list, and they go, we're going to do it tonight. And Billy, they did it. And I'm telling you, 90% of the audience was totally lost and checked out. It was all deep tracks. It would be like you guys going out and not playing anything from Dookie or whatever. And they're sitting there, and the people are grumbling because it was a casino gig and they were getting pissed off. And Rick, in classic Rick fashion, mid-set, goes up to the mic and says, you guys all know Eddie Trunk sitting over there, points to me. He goes, if you don't like the set list, he picked every song. Blame him. I swear to God.
That is such a Rick Nielsen thing to do. It's like, he was on the side of the stage one night. We were playing, I think we were playing Chicago. And we had this one part in our set where like our roadies from Back and Forth would flick picks across the stage. And so he was standing on the side of my guitar tech just watching. And I don't know if anybody knows, but that guy can like, it's like a some kind of kung fu throwing star, like the way that he can throw picks. I mean, I was like dodging these picks that were zinging by my eyes, like, and I think at one point we're just like, you're going to end up hitting him in the head because, but he's, I mean, he's great, you know, like I've always had great interactions with those guys. They're just like super down to earth and, great band, good people.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, speaking of set lists, we should talk about some Green Day stuff here because you guys have a lot going on. First of all, congratulations on Saviors. Phenomenal record. It really is. And
Thank you.
I hear so much of the classic Green Day in there, but again, some of these influences that we're talking about, whether it be in Dilemma or the latest song, Bobby Sox, or whatever it is, you hear, you know, the very signature Green Day sound, but if we really dug in, we probably, starting to connect these dots to these bands that you grew up with. But tell me about making this record, because you said you did some of it in England, and I know you'd worked with Butch on some previous records, Butch Walker, but this one you went back to Rob Cavallo, who did a lot of your biggest records. So, tell me about going into the studio and making this remarkably your 14th record, which I couldn't believe.
Yeah, it was, gosh, I love working with Butch, by the way. He's such a good dude. He's so freaking talented.
Yes.
So he's like, definitely, I consider him a great friend. And then, but one day, we were just kind of doing stuff on our own and, having band practice and talking about it. And one day I thought, I was like, I'm just going to call Rob. And I've been, we've always had a great relationship. And so I texted him. And I just said, "Hey man, how's it going?" And that's all I asked. I had no agenda or anything. And he writes back, "Are you ready to make rock and roll history again?" And I was like, "Well, I was just texting to say hello, but I mean, since you bring it up." So that's how we ended up getting back with Rob. And we hadn't worked with him in over 10 years, and so we never lost a step. He's his energy and his sonic influence that he brought in, and he really loves digging into songs. There's like at one point we were talking about the song "The American Dream Is Killing Me," and there's a part in the song where it goes to a bridge right after the first chorus, and it's just like this little string arrangement and stuff like that. And we talk about things like it's like, oh, this part really informs the song. And not only does it inform the song, it informs what you're about to listen to because we love making albums. It's just like, that's our art, like we don't just do a single and fill it with a bunch of other songs. So we like to conceptualize what we're doing when it comes to making an entire record. And so, it's those kind of conversations that you have that are so deep and important, because when it comes down to it, it's just like, what are the songs saying? How is the band, communicating with each other as musicians, and, how me and Mike and Trey are playing off each other. And it's just a great experience. And it's like this creative conversations that are really rare that, people just like, they love going down going down a place that's deeper than you normally do when it comes to music and songwriting.
Yeah. I not to get too overly geeky, which I am, but usually could tend to be, but the record, in addition to Rob producing it, correct me if I'm wrong, but Chris Lord-Alge mixed it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I know CLA, and he, for people listening that don't know the industry side of this, he's a legendary mix guy and probably the leading guy. And I bring that up because the mix on this sonically and everything is just amazing, man. It just jumps out at you. And that's just comes into that cocktail of the Green Day sound as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's been mixing our records since like Nimrod. He mixed like Good Riddance, Time of Your Life, and that whole album. We've been using him through the years, And, he just knows how to crack the code when it comes to like, making records with them. And we did 21st Century Breakdown with them, and Butch Vig produced that one. And he was really into like the original mixes of Quadrophenia at the time. And so he was just like, let's do something a little bit darker. And let's do, so he, he's got a great studio, and it's just, it looks like a little mini museum with like all the, different instruments around. And, but yeah, he's so abrasive and funny. But I him and his brother Tom, they're elite mixers.
Yeah, without a doubt. The track Dilemma is one of my favorites on Saviors, and I wanted to ask you about writing that one and the backstory on it. Is there some autobiographical element to that, maybe in terms of your own personal life?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I've always had a rocky history with alcohol. I mean, especially since I was a teenager, and it's autobiographical, where it just like, the first line is like, welcome to my problem, in a lot of ways, like, welcome to my nightmare. I even use that line. But it's, I mean, I wrote it it's just like, you might as well just bare your soul and just be absolutely 100. A lot of songwriting, I think, is you admit the things to yourself that you're afraid to say out loud. And so writing lyrics, it's really important. I mean, like, if you think about like the first John Lennon solo record, where it's just he's saying things, it's almost uncomfortable to like listen to like some of his lyrics, because you're like, man, he's going real deep. So I guess it's kind of like the same thing. I just wanted to tell my truth, really.
Yeah, and I'm always, as a fan, I'm always so interested in the art of songwriting, because look, there's a million great musicians, and you're a great guitar player. I mean, I think you're very underrated in that area. I have friends of mine who are professional guitar players, and they talk about your playing all the time, and they're like, Billie Joe's one of the most underrated guys. I think people just look at Green Day and like, oh, he's just bashing out power chords or whatever. But if you really listen and watch, a lot of guitar players will tell, everyone that about your ability. I just read a great interview with you in Guitar World, actually, talking about your guitar playing. Do you feel that aspect of what you do? I mean, as a singer, as a frontman, as a songwriter, I think you're pretty acknowledged, but do you feel like the guitar playing aspect of what you do gets a little overlooked?
I don't really worry about it so much. I think it's because I'm always focused on the songs. Just the melody and the lyrics and just the way that me and Mike and Trey play together. I think that there was a time when, especially in the 90s, where no one was playing guitar solos anymore. And I wanted to, like that on Dookie, I wanted to play it's just like, 3 chords can be the actual solo. But then as time went on, when I was around, like doing stuff around American Idiot, I started kind of flexing more as my guitar solos. And, like a lot of, like when I was a kid, it was always about being a lead guitar player. And I kind of, when I started getting more into punk rock and stuff like that, it sort of, I was just more into songs and stuff like that. So it was, on this record, I played a lot of solos, almost every single, there's a song, Corvette Summer, where I had, that's like a really fun solo on there. And then there's like stuff like, on the song Saviors. And, it's just, I just kind of let my hands go a little bit more. And, I love guitar players like, Mick Ronson and, people like James Honeyman Scott, and the way that they played, like, these like really melodic, even Brian May, and But I mean, a lot of my favorite guitar players. I mean, I come from the school of hard rock. You know, my favorites were Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads. I loved Warren DeMartini. I loved Angus Young. So you know, that's the stuff that taught me how to play. And I just sort of, I was like, man, if I have to learn how to play like that, then I'm going to end up stuck in my room and not playing for the rest of my life. You know? So it's all like melody, you know, but when it comes down to it and just countering what I do with my vocal melody.
You know, anybody that knows anything about you and your band, I mean, you're from the Bay Area, you're from Oakland and that area of California, which it was super, like you talked about some of those influences you had, but that area was also super fertile for like thrash and a lot of heavy music to come out of there. Obviously, people know, you know, a lot of the band's household names, even obviously Metallica still being based there, but Exodus and Testament and all of that. Did any of that, as you were coming up, have any imprint on you at all, the thrash stuff? Yeah,
I started like as soon as, you know, I got like right around my first year of high school, I got really into, I think that's when Master of Puppets came out. And then Peace Sells, Who's Buying by Megadeth. And there was a club there called Ruthie's Inn. And that's where, I mean, basically it's the house that thrash built because, you know, they were all of like the hardcore bands and metal bands were just commingling on the same bill. And it was like, you know, bands like DRI and, you know, Testament and, you know, Exodus, like we talked about before. And, you know, Possessed, who actually came from my high school. And they were, you know, they just, I don't know how it happened. I mean, it's an amazing thing that with like thrash was basically made in the East Bay in Berkeley, California, you know, with all these bands coming from different areas. I mean, there were these guys in my school that are called Sacrilege BC, Desecration. There's, you know, it was just like fertile for, but yeah, Ruthie's Inn was the club where all of that stuff came out. And obviously Mabuhay Gardens. And I mean, I actually played in like a thrash metal band called Blood Rage. That was our first show was at the On Broadway in San Francisco, right above the Mabuhay Gardens.
You know, and I remember the first time I ever heard of Green Day, I'm pretty sure early on, even before Dookie, didn't you have the same managers that Testament had?
Yeah, that's right.
Elliot and Jeff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Because I worked at Megaforce Records from 86 to 91, and we were the East Coast thrash label, basically. And we were the first label to bring Metallica and all of that to the world. And I remember when we signed Testament, those guys telling me about these kids that they were handling in the Bay Area called Green Day. And of course, you know, a couple years later, you know, you're selling millions and millions of records with Dookie. So that was the first kind of connection I remember, is from hearing from the Testament guys and their manager about this other act that they had at the time.
Wow. That's so cool. Yeah. I mean, God, I think they were called, I think their first name was Legacy, right? Like they went from Legacy to Testament. And then, and they were huge.
Yeah.
You know, they still are. You know, it's really funny. My son, he was playing a show. He was in a band, and he was playing a show in Atlanta, and it was his 21st birthday. And then, but they were playing in the small room at this club that I can't remember, and in the big room, Testament was playing. So, but the guys in Testament figured out that he was just turned 21, so they made him do shots. Like, you know, you know, and it was just, there was so much punk rock and thrash at the time. And you know, it used to be a thing where those kinds of music didn't really coexist. You know, like, I know that Iron Maiden, like to this day, they will say they hate punk rock, stuff like that. But that just flipped when, you know, like all of a sudden you look in the back of of Metallica, Metallica's album, and they're listening to Misfits records, stuff like that. So it's Testament. Yes, I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to get on a tangent about it.
But going back to Maiden, I mean, they may say that, but there's a lot of people that listen to those early Maiden records with Paul Di'Anno and feel there's a big punk influence there, that Paul actually had a real punk approach. And I actually saw Maiden with, cause I'm 59. So I tell people all the time, I may be old, but I saw a lot of cool shows. And I saw Maiden with Di'Anno, and Di'Anno had a very punk rock approach to the way he came out and the way he fronted and the way he looked and what he brought to the first couple Maiden records. So Maiden may say that maybe as a reaction to what Paul Di'Anno brought on those early records. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was just one of them was asking or something, because there was like that wild movement that was happening in England, and that where people were making their like cardboard guitars and coming out and playing air guitar.
New wave of British heavy metal. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And they would just have like a DJ, a guy that, I think ended up working at Kerrang. He's this really cool journalist. He does really great interviews. Bald guy, huge teeth. I can't remember his name. But he, just go up and DJ these, like, stuff like that, that and Saxon, and people would come out with literally playing cardboard guitars, and I mean, it's like, it had to have been like one of the coolest thing to witness. Is like watching like young kids playing in a room full of air guitar,
Yeah, no doubt. I want to ask you about music videos, because obviously, when you guys came on the scene and Dookie blew up, MTV drove a lot of that, and you guys really embraced that and made some great videos. And now for the new album, Saviors, I think you got 4 or 5 out there. I noticed that the majority of them, I think 3 of the 4 that I looked at, were in black and white. I don't know if that was an intentional move or what, but what do you did you enjoy, and do you enjoy the process of making videos back then versus now? Obviously now they're used in a totally different way, basically on websites and YouTube and all of that. Back in the day, they were big budget affairs that really drove a record. But what's your take on doing music videos, and is it a necessary evil for you, or is it something you've always been into?
It's something I've always been into, but this is probably the most fun I've had making videos this time, just because we've been working with this guy Ryan Baxley, and he's always done sort of independent videos of like local, smaller LA bands, and he worked with the biggest band, and he worked with this band Fiddler, and so we asked him if he wanted to do something, and the first video, American Dream is Killing Me, we basically put our own money into it because the budget was so small, so we're like, look, you know what, let's make something great. It's like the first single we put out in a while, and so that's when we did sort of the Night of the Living Dead with all the zombies and stuff like that. And that was just a blast. So much fun with putting makeup on and looking like creatures, And then we did stuff that had a smaller budget, but that was really effective, for Dilemma, and that's going from black and white and doing and then a burst into color, and it's sort of like this party gone wrong. And what else did we do? We did a backyard party for Bobby Sox, which was, and everybody, the great thing is it felt so homey because everyone that was there, everyone was in bands. So it was it felt very real. It's he just invited all of his friends' bands to come out, and we happen to know everybody too. So it just made it was a really good time making all of them.
And you said something earlier, speaking of the older days, which I really appreciated. You said you still love making albums, and you love that whole experience of giving people a full, piece of art, everything top to bottom, track 1 through 10 or 1 through 12, whatever. And You know, I appreciate that so much because I see people's attention spans getting so short now, and I see more and more people just doing singles or EPs or what have you. A lot of artists releasing 4 or 5 songs in advance of the actual album, which has become the norm. Used to be maybe one song and then the album comes out a couple weeks later. And then you also go to the formats. And, you know, a lot of people would think I'd be on the vinyl kick. I'm actually not. I'm a CD guy to my core. It's still by far my favorite format. So I get into fun debates with people, CD versus vinyl and what have you. And now I notice that more and more artists are actually starting to make their albums on cassettes again, which I think you guys did with Saviors. So you know, it's really presenting an album to people in 2024. I guess the idea is to give them every possible viable option to want to go out and buy it and actually own it and listen to it start to finish.
Yeah, that's all true. You know, I mean, I think that, like, you know, cassettes is like these days is more, it's a bit kitschy, you know, but I mean, it's something that, you know, like for, you know, someone my age, I always got into cassettes and, you know, taping off of other people's, the old way of illegally downloading, which was like, you know, making a cassette off your friend's album. But it was, yeah, I mean, I think for us, vinyl is so important because it shows you, like, this is, we made an entire record of great songs. It's not just like a one and done kind of thing. And and I think that our fans, and a lot of our younger fans, are really getting into that. Like so, you know, vinyl now is, you know, has such a big resurgence, where, you know, people can't, you know, even with like someone like Taylor Swift, I mean, you can't keep the vinyl on the shelves. I have a studio that's next door to, my friend's got a record store called 1 2 3 4 Go. And, you know, he has a great business because people just love buying albums now and buying vinyl.
I mean, I personally am all about CDs still, and that's my preferred format. But I love the fact that vinyl exists, or cassettes, or I don't care if you want to do 8 tracks or whatever, because I think it's important to have, like, for the records I really love and the bands I really love, I have to have it physically. And that might just be because of how old I am. But I don't want to just click on a screen. I want to hold it. You know, the reasons why I know about people like Chris Lord-Alge or Rob Cavallo or whatever is because I read liner notes. Ever since a kid, I take all that stuff in. And the artwork and everything, I feel it's so important. And, you know, I had this radio show made some news not too long ago that's still reverberating because Wolfgang Van Halen was on with me and he was talking about the last Van Halen album. And I asked him why it wasn't on any of the streaming platforms because people were complaining to my show they couldn't find it on streaming. And Wolf said, basically, David Lee Roth doesn't want it on there anymore because he doesn't like the record, and that touched off this whole thing of Roth going after Wolf and all this craziness. But the thing is that there was a more important point, I think, made there that maybe got lost a little bit, and that is that if you really love something and you want to own it, you should have it physically because who knows if there's disputes with streaming or an artist pulls their music or whatever. I can go grab that Van Halen record right now on CD. It's going to sound as good as the day I bought it. And I think that that's really important, having that ownership and personal connection with the music you love. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's like, if nowadays nobody would know who like Ted Templeman is, you know, because, you know, you read the liner notes and you see like, it's like, oh my God, that guy's, you know, you start to figure out, like, looking through, like, the liner notes and whether it's that or the lyrics or the credits and things like that, where people, and even the studio that he recorded at, because people just want to know. I mean, I always wanted to know. It was like, you know, you can kind of drift off into your own, like, daydream and go, gosh, I wish I was like, I could do something. Hopefully one day I could have like a Ted Templeman or something like that. So the physical stuff is so important. And we try to definitely put it up on, like, you know, our socials too, about who made the record. Who, we put in a lot of video stuff of like, stuff like Chris Lord-Alge actually working on it, doing it as he's mixing it at, as we're filming him. And so, yeah, I mean, that stuff is important to me. I think one of the things that's happened is the way people make records is like, people can do it in their bedroom. And so there's no one to credit except themselves, so
right.
It's, so there's no more like, who's the engineer, who's the producer, who's the guitar tech, who's this? It's just people, like doing it on their computer all by themselves.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, I don't want to keep you too long, but do you have a few more minutes? Are you okay? Because a few other things I want to ask you about. All right, cool. That's great.
Absolutely.
So you have a tour coming, and it's a big tour, man. You're playing baseball stadiums all over America, and you are getting ready to go out. It starts on July 29th in Washington, D.C., and the as of now, last date late September in San Diego. This being Sirius XM, people listening all over America and Canada, just go to greenday.com, see if there's a date that is coming near you. But it's a great package that also features on it Smashing Pumpkins. You have on there. Am I correct on that? And Rancid, right?
Yep. Yeah, Rancid and the Linda Lindas.
And the Linda Lindas, I know. Tell people about the Linda Lindas, because Rancid and Pumpkins, everybody knows, I would think. But Linda Lindas are a young LA band of girls or women, right? Young girls that are really coming up. I know a lot of people that I've talked to that are friends say they're a band I got to check out. They really like what they do.
Yeah, they write really catchy songs. They started really young. They're all still teenagers. And one of their dads, it kind of goes back to like we've known him, and he's traveled in the same circles as like the East Bay punk scene. But he goes way back. So he did these benefit shows that the Linda Lindas played, that was like saving music in Chinatown, and but they're a great band, really catchy. People really love them. They've been doing really well, and they're so young. I don't know if they're getting homeschooled or what.
I know they're kids, yeah. Which I'm sure on some level you can relate to, because you started super young, right? I mean, how old were you when the actual very, very first Green Day record came out?
We recorded our first EP and I was 16.
Well,
and our first album came out, I was 17. Back when we were on a label called Lookout Records. So and then we had a different drummer, and then we got Trey. And like, it was so funny because we were all 18 and he was 17 when he joined the band. And like, I mean, shit, dude, I went through puberty in this band. It's like,
did that change your voice? Was that, on a serious note, was that an issue with your vocal, being the lead singer?
No, I mean, it's changed naturally, but my voice had already changed by the time I was, it's like, it wasn't like a Michael Jackson thing or anything like that. So it was, but that's the thing that's so important now. I think that's missing from a lot of bands is like, no matter whose ability is whatever, play together, play with your friends, start young, but start with your friends, and don't try to put I think a lot of kids, they get into like, I see these kids making like videos of them playing drums or their favorite songs and stuff like that. And they do it, like on their Instagram channel. And I'm like, the only thing I can think of is like, don't you have a friend to do this with too? That's the great thing about with me and Mike, like we sat down and he played, I was a better guitar player, but he was a good guitar player. And like the first songs we learned together was Photograph by Def Leppard, Heaven's on Fire by Kiss, Crazy Train, and I'm missing one more, but and then we just kept playing together. And then as we got older, we became on the same level, especially when Mike is a phenomenal bass player.
Yeah.
But it was, so it was great that we grew up together doing it. And I hope that that's what young bands are doing now.
And what is it about trios? Because what's interesting I've been thinking about this for a long time. There is obviously in the history of rock bands and lineups, there's always a lot of upheaval and a lot of members that come and go and various lineup changes and eras and all of that. And when you look at a lot of trios, for the most part, they stay together. I mean, Rush as three guys was together for over 40 years without a lineup change. ZZ Top, until Dusty passed away, the same three guys the entire time. There's a lot of examples of it. You guys have had the same three guys. You mentioned you had a drummer early on, but for the most part, the entire history of the band, with seemingly from externally no real drama internally that as fans we could tell. There might be, but I don't know. But it just seems like trios seem to have a stronger bond and hold lineups together for longer than bands that aren't. You have any thoughts on that?
Gosh, I don't know. When you say Rush, I think of like Geddy Lee as being like a really easy person to be around. It's just like seeing his interviews or something. But like, I think that for us, our crazy personalities just blend together for some reason. I think anytime there's an issue, we can take care of it more quickly because it's like we're not, there's no power struggle when it comes to, we know how to talk to each other. And I don't know why. I mean, even being young men when we were really young, is like we were able to talk things through, like even the toughest of times, and I think we've always sort of run it as kind of a collective. And, Mike, I've known since I was 10. So we've always been able to just be, honest with each other. And if there was ever a problem, it's always like, lay everything out on the table. Don't bullshit each other. Just respect each other. And we're going to come to, we'll be able to deal with any problem, because nothing can be that bad, like I wouldn't think so, it's like, and if it does get bad, you get over it, it's like, that's just how it's always worked for us.
Yeah, I asked Geddy about it several times, and he, you're kind of on point with what you're thinking, Billy, because Geddy, I remember his answer to me, because he said, you know what, man? He said, we just never let things get too heavy. And he said this, said if there was drama and there was tension or whatever, we get right to the heart of it. He said, and from the minute we all came together, we just said, these are the three guys, and we're going to make everything fair, and everybody's going to be treated equally, and we're all going to be great. And he said it just lasted for 40 years. But it's always interesting with trios. And obviously, if you lose a guy in a trio, if you have a 5-piece band, you lose a guy. I mean, you lose a guy in a 3-piece band, it's a bigger thing because it's only 3 guys. So, maybe it's a little more weighted that way, that you don't want to, mess around. I don't know, but I think it's a really cool thing that you guys have gone through this. I mean, celebrating 30 years of Dookie, and I know that you're celebrating 20 years of American Idiot, and I got to say, I mean, that's amazing, the amount of time that's gone by, and you're going to be featuring those albums on this tour, right? You're playing them in their entirety?
Yeah, I don't know what we were thinking, but I'm kidding. But yeah, we're going to play both albums in their entirety. I mean, it's such a rare thing that you have these, monumental moments of like your biggest records, like that are exactly 10 years apart. And, now that it's been 20 years since Idiot came out, I think it was just like, man, this is one of those once in a lifetime opportunities where we can play these 2 records. And, who knows what's going to happen in another 10 years from now? Nobody knows. But I think like doing it now, it just felt right. So it'll be interesting to see like people in the crowd, because there'll be, obviously young people, then there's going to be millennials, and there's going to be Gen Xers. So it'll be, I don't know. It should be. We're really looking forward to it. We're like super excited, and it's going to be fun.
Are you going to do it in? Are you going to do each album in sequence, or throughout the course of the set, you're just going to do every song at some point?
We plan on doing it in its entirety. We have, in sequence. So, the crazy thing about like Dookie is it's like 14 songs in 27 minutes or something like that. So it's going to fly by, but we're, I think it's probably like we're going to be playing some other cuts that are on different records for sure doing some songs off Saviors. And then, we'll end up doing like 21 Guns and Minority and things like that for sure. And then, but then we'll, it's like, so the set changes that we have coming right now it's going to look incredible because it's going to have it's almost like Dookie is going to be opening up for American Idiot because the set change is going to be two different things altogether.
How many copies so far has Dookie sold in America? Is it a diamond record at this point?
Yeah, it was diamond. Like, it's so funny. I gave it to my mom. I was like,
the Diamond Award.
My diamond record to my. What's that?
You gave the Diamond Award to your mom. We should tell people what that means that don't know. Diamond. So you got gold, platinum, and double platinum, and all of that. If you go 10 million plus, that is rarefied air, and that's the area where Back in Black and Thriller and Eagles' Greatest Hits and all of that live. So it's a really rare, unique, incredible feat to hit 10 million plus, and that's when you are designated diamond and get a Diamond Award. So you gave that one to your mom, huh? Yeah. She just she has it, like, she shows it off to her friends, stuff like that. So. But yeah, I mean, it went down. Like, I think I got that award. I think like 15 years ago is when. So it was like, it went sold over 10 million in the States, and I'm not sure where it's at now. I mean, worldwide, but I mean that record was just colossal. I'll tell you what, I worked in a record store for a long, long time, and even during times in my career when I was doing radio, doing TV, doing whatever, record labels, I always still kept a hand in the record store that I worked at because it was really useful to me because it kept me in touch with music. It kept me aware of music. Even if I didn't like it, I had to know about it because I was selling it. I saw everything that people were buying. It was an important thing, and that I still call on that experience a lot in what I do. But I was working in a record store part-time for fun when Dookie came out and blew up. And I've never seen anything like what went on with that record because it was like we couldn't even we didn't even put them on the shelf. We would just rip open the boxes of cassettes or CDs or vinyl or whatever and just stack them on the counter because literally like selling like hotcakes. And the thing I also remember so much about it was the diversity in the people that were buying it. It was everything from little kids to rock fans to hard rock fans to older people to housewives. I mean, it just went across the board and touched so many different people. And I got to imagine for you guys being so young at that time, you had to be like, what the fuck is going on here, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys going into Dookie had no idea what was about to happen. Yeah, it was, you feel like, I remember making it, and I remember thinking, I was like, well, I love all these songs. I think that, we worked with Rob. We were like, the production is great. Everything feels right about it. So, we were also just kind of like crazy enough to take the risk. And so we did. And at the time, like alternative and grunge was so big. So we figured like it was a right time for us to put the record out. But, you just never know, especially coming from the scene that we came from, because it's like, it's very political. They make music very political, and as far as just like the ethos that comes around in Berkeley and San Francisco.
So we were, it got huge. And I remembered how exciting that time was. It was like all of a sudden we went from playing like, you know, backyards and VFW halls, and then suddenly we're playing at Cobo Hall, you know, and then like we were, and then there's that feeling of when you get home from tour and you're like, oh shit, what the fuck are we gonna do now? You know, and like, you know, because I think there was a fear that like we wanted to keep changing and have it. You know, we always look at like a band like the Beatles as having that ultimate like career, and so we wanted to have, you know, wanted to keep making records that were, you know, that still were relevant to people and relevant to us. And you know, it's a roller coaster, and that was one of those like, you know, that was one of those parts in the roller coaster where all of a sudden your hands are up and you're going upside down in a circle. So it was, yeah, it was a crazy time. It was really fun. And, you know, it was also felt really scary at the same time. So,
I was going to say, because there's nothing that can prepare you for that, I would think. Like, there's like your kids, you make this record. Obviously, it's on a major label, so that's a big deal for you. You go to Reprise, which is part of Warner Brothers and all that. But you're still kids, like you're still this punk band from the Bay Area trying to figure it out and trying to build an audience. And then this thing just explodes over 10, like you said, well over 10 million at this point. There's no... I don't care who your manager is, your agent, the people around you. There's really nothing that can prepare you for that. That, you know, what's coming down the pike, MTV, you know, not being able, I would think, to go to the grocery store anymore. I mean, that's got to be a hard thing to, as exciting as it must be. There's also got to be an element to it that's just a little weird, and you just don't know what to do or how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, your life just changes so much, you know, especially like a lot of my friends, like we all just turned 21 years old. So like a lot of my friends they're just going out to the bars and hanging out for the first time, and still living in, sharing apartments together. And so that part, like, I felt like I was a struggle, because it was like, did I just sort of, you know, miss out on like a part of like growing up or becoming an adult, that all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, now I got to like wonder who's like climbing on my trees to come and look at me, or, you know, take a picture, or just fans just kind of showing up, or going out to a bar and people recognizing you. And then, you know, either it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, you get to a fight with somebody. But it was, yeah, it was crazy to navigate. I can't believe that we did, because there's a lot of bands at that time that didn't, you know. It's really weird to think about it. And I thought about it the other day. It's like a lot of the bands that I would, you know, quote unquote, call my peers, a lot of the singers are not with us anymore, you know. And it's like, you know, whether it's Chris Cornell or Lane from,
Alice in Chains,
Kurt,
Scott Weiland,
you know, Scott Weiland. I mean, it's like, holy shit, you know, it takes your breath away. It gives you like, oh my God, like, you know, they didn't make it, you know, like. And so for us, I have so much gratitude and thank God every day that like we made it through it, you know, like that crazy time. And we stuck together, really.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It really is. Again, man, I appreciate the time. I won't keep you much longer. Just a few other quick things I wanted to hit you with. When we talked about Green Day being a trio, and you were nice enough to invite me a couple weeks ago to a private show that you guys did in Vegas, and didn't get a chance to say hi, but I watched the whole set, and I hadn't seen you guys live in a really long time, and I loved it. And the band just sounded so good, and I didn't realize that when you play live, you expand out to I think, a 6-piece. So you basically double the amount of personnel in the band to fill out the sound, I guess, and to to build it out a little bit, which I really appreciate because I'm a very, very outspoken guy against pre-recorded stuff live. I love a live band to be totally live.
I've definitely noticed that.
And I despise it, man, because I think it's an epidemic and I think it's the end of real rock and roll. And I just can't look, I don't mind you got an intro tape or a keyboard part, but shit is going off the rails, and I think it's just awful, awful, awful. So I appreciate the hell out of what you guys are doing, and that even for the live performances, you do which I have no problem with. You do what you need to do live to make that sound right with actual musicians and players. When did you start doing that? When did you start taking that approach to building out the band for the live performances?
Well, it started our second guitar player, Jason White. He's been playing with us since 1999. I've known Jason I met Jason on the very first Green Day tour in like 1990, and I always thought he's just a really good guy. And he ended up moving to the Bay Area, and he's from Arkansas, and I ended up playing music with him in a side project called Pinhead Gunpowder. And then as soon as I started writing more kind of guitar parts, I was like, it would be great to have someone to come out and, either play these parts or just share these parts. So he was the first guy I thought of. So I asked him to come out and join us, and he's been with us ever since. And then Jason Freeze is our keyboard player. You probably know his brother Josh. He plays in the Foo Fighters now.
Sure.
And he's amazing musician. Like, plays the shit out of the saxophone. An amazing keyboard player, amazing singer. So he filled it out even more. And then we got Kevin Preston. We've had a few different guys before that to really it's like one guitar sounds good, two guitars sounds great, three guitars sound phenomenal. So it's like, it just make it, more the better, so it's kind of like our crazy horse, as far as our putting our band together. It's just like, we all get along great, and it sounds great, and it's all totally live. There's no, we don't have, nobody's pushing a space bar, to make, whatever. It's like, and on one hand, I can see why some bands would do that. If I think about when I go back to Pete Townsend, when, doing Baba O'Reilly, and I see there's that old footage of Keith Moon with headphones on, and they're playing live, and they had to recreate that sound, but that was
that's not what that's where people got me sideways, because that's not what I'm talking about at all. I get that. Yeah. I have no problem with that. We all know, because I've seen it. I've talked to people on the crew. I mean, there's bands playing with Pro Tools rigs under the stage, and there is nothing live, lead vocal, backing vocal, guitars. I mean, it's madness what's going on. And, I just think about what I worry about as a rock fan is in the pop world. And I just saw a story on this the other day where Ashley Simpson, remember when she got busted lip syncing on Saturday Night Live? You remember that whole scandal? Yeah. And that was a huge deal at the time. People were outraged and all of that. Well, flash forward 20 years in the pop world, it's accepted. These people are given Grammys. They're blatantly doing it. And I just worry that in the rock world, we go down that same thing. I mean, I just think I watch people spending $500, $1,000 to go to a show, and I'm like, I don't know, call me crazy. The whole reason I ever went to a concert was to hear a band play live. And if that's taken off the table, what am I doing there? So that's just, it's just a hard line for me. And again, I got no problem. You got one song, two songs, you got something going on. But I mean, Billy, I've said, and I've got some artists willing to write the songs and record the tracks for me. I can't play or sing a note, but I'm going to go on tour if it's okay to do that. I'm going to just...
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's just I've been at festivals where I see the computer on the side, and I've actually seen bands do what would sound like a crowd sing along with their music. So they'll be playing live or not playing live, whatever they're doing. But then, and you think that the crowd is singing the entire chorus to the song, and you're like, that's not the crowd. And you look at the crowd and you're like, holy shit, they're not singing at all. It's like they just pre-recorded like fans. Like, what the fuck? It's like, I don't know. I'm call me a purist, but I think either you play it live or you don't.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. When you guys came out a couple weeks ago, pre-Super Bowl, the show you invited me to, again, it was a private show, but you came out at the House of Blues, great venue. A couple months earlier, I had just done a big party in that venue for my 40th year in radio and had all these guys show up, Alice Cooper, Sammy Hagar. It was crazy. And that venue is so dialed in. The sound is so good. The sight lines are so good. And when you guys came out, and you only played an hour or whatever, but you just blasted away with those guitars driving, and you were all over the stage. And, if somebody's off mic a little bit, it sounded like they were off mic. I mean, that's real live rock and roll. I was like, fuck yeah, I mean, that's just the way you do it. And I got so much respect for the bands like yourselves that are still doing it that way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, God, I love guitars. I'm a guitar junkie, and I want to hear it. I don't want to hear it like a recorded version of it.
Right.
It's just like I like mistakes. Mistakes are when you see it on stage. I think that they're charming. I think it's cool. That's what it's not supposed to be perfect.
Exactly.
It should be. That's what rock and roll is.
Exactly.
That's from its inception. It's like it's like you go up and you hear a guitar out of tune. I mean, fuck it. It's just a little out of tune, and you just go grab another one.
I saw Aerosmith in Vegas a couple years ago, and Joe and Steven came out at the end, and they made a couple mistakes during the show, and they were brilliant, beautiful, sloppy, real mistakes. And Joe said to Steven said to Joe, he said. He goes, on the mic, he goes, at the end when they were thanking the crowd, he goes, well, Joe, we really fucked up a couple times tonight, didn't we? And Joe kind of nodded, and Steven goes, but you guys all had a good time, right? It was real rock and roll, and everybody went crazy, and that was it. I was like, that's it? Beautiful. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. Do you have a preference between... So I got to see you again. This was a private gig, so a way small place for you guys, a club theater like the House of Blues. This tour you have coming up with Pumpkins and everything, you're doing baseball stadiums for the most part across the country. As a performer, do you have a preference? Do you like doing... I mean, I know you played in Vegas a couple months earlier at the Backstage Billiards down on Fremont. I mean, do you like doing those smaller club shows versus the stadiums, or do you like both worlds equally?
I like it all. I don't know if that's equal or not. I mean, the stadiums it's a different kind of rush altogether. It's just, all of a sudden you're playing in front of 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people, and everyone's on their feet and having a great time. And that's just like a phenomenal, huge experience where, but I love playing clubs. I have a cover band called the Cover Up, and just me and my friends will go and we'll play the local bars and just play covers, have fun, watch our friends have drinks. And, I love doing that. And then we did the Green Day video for Bobby Sock, and it was it was sort of set in a backyard party. So we were like, well, let's just play 5 songs before we start filming, just to make it feel like a party. So, and it's just you can create any moment that you have, you can make it a special moment so it sticks out in your memory about something that you did that was really cool. And, it's not just like playing a stadium. And, I mean, God, I'm grateful that the fact that we can play to that many people, it's great. But I don't know. I love it all. I mean, I'm just, I'm a rock and roll whore. I love playing live. I love the whole atmosphere, and it's just my thing.
What's the biggest crowd Green Day has ever played to in your history so far, in terms of number of people?
Oh, geez. Well, I would say Woodstock '94, but I'm not sure if that counts. But God, I mean, we played.
What about your own show? Like, I saw you're doing Wembley coming up on the European stuff that before you get to America. I mean, playing Wembley and some of these historic stadiums for your band, it's just got to be like, being a rock nerd like you are as well. I mean, I can't even imagine, even if you've done it a few times, to roll in and be like, yeah, we're headlining Wembley Stadium. I mean, that's just got to be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, playing the soccer stadiums in Europe, it's like nothing. It's a feeling that you can't really describe. But like, yeah, we played Emirates, where Arsenal plays, the Arsenal soccer team, and we broke the record for attendance that was there. And so, yeah, now we're playing Wembley, and it's just massive. It's just like, people out here love their rock and roll. In England and Europe. It's just, you got to pinch yourself, because it's like you walk out on stage and you're at, that first thing, you're just like, holy shit, here we go. It's the greatest feeling in the world. No drugs could beat it.
All right. 2 more things and I'll let you go. I promise. You mentioned earlier side projects. And at one point, if I'm not mistaken, you were doing some work with a guy who is a friend, and I was a huge fan of his band, Degeneration, and that's Jesse Malin. Didn't you have a side thing with Jesse? You did a couple things with Jesse over the years, right?
Yeah, Jesse's been like Degen. They played. We did a whole year. American and European tour with them back in like 1997, and we've just been really good friends ever since. But he's, we did this thing called, because like I'm from a town called Rodeo, and he's from Queens, so we call it the Rodeo Queen.
Right, that's right.
And so we did 2 songs together. So and we just side A, side B, and then I've always, when I come to he invites me to come up on stage when he's playing, and I've invited him to come up and play with us, and he's a great friend. Jesse's so talented. He's such a good guy. He's like the heart and soul of the Lower East Side.
Yeah, and he had a crazy health thing that happened to him, so everybody's still pulling for him and hoping he can recover, but he's got a tough road ahead of him. So we talked about it on the air. Jesse had something happen in his back, which paralyzed him from the waist down. So hopefully he's I'm in touch with him from time to time. Hopefully he's hanging in there, because for a guy that has so much energy, especially on stage, to have that happen out of nowhere is just not right. So and if anybody if anybody can battle that, I'm sure he can, and because he's a fighter. So pulling for the best for him, no doubt. And
I love Jesse.
I wanted to ask you, I saw on the Green Day website, what is Punk Bunny Coffee? Is that your own line of coffee?
Yeah, we started like making coffee. We've been doing it for like 10 years now. It was but we rebranded it as Punk Bunny, and it was just kind of a side project that like me, Mike, and Trey started. I mean, we love coffee, so we might as well make it.
Right.
So but it's a cool brand. It's cool. It's just got like a great aesthetic to it. So we're gonna we got our mascot on stage is like a drunken rabbit that comes out, and so that's where we got the idea. We called it Drunk Bunny, but we're like, not. Doesn't make sense to call it Drunk Bunny, so we just looks like, well, let's just call it Punk Bunny. So it's really cool, and it tastes good, and a lot of it is the pods are sustainable, and you can compost it too. So it's trying to do something new with a sort of the Keurig type pods.
Anything that you want to hit before I let you go? As far as we mentioned the tour again, starting in D.C. It's with Smashing Pumpkins, Rancid, and the Linda Lindas. That's going to be a massive tour coming up this summer. The album Saviors is out now. You mentioned, I touched on the One Side thing you did with Jesse a while ago. You talk about having this cover band and stuff. Are you working personally on anything else right now outside of Green Day?
No, not really. I've just been kind of giving myself a break for a while. It's been, we've been making, like, that's the thing about making records. It's like it takes you a long time to come up with songs. I mean, everyone, it's that old saying. It's like, it's your, you have your whole life to make your first album, but you got 2 years to make your second album. So, right now I just, I want to take some time. I mean, I've done, I'd love to do something else with Nora Jones, as we made that Everly Brothers tribute record together. And where we were both just singing 2-part harmony in it. But, other than that, I'm just stoked to be in Green Day, and, it's going to be a really fun couple of years.
Yeah, you guys have, looks like a lot ahead of you. And again, man, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this. It was funny because I'm not good with direct messages on social media. And I noticed, I only discovered that you contacted me through a direct message on Instagram a couple times. And I'm like, holy shit, Billie Joe's going to think I'm blowing him off. I just never saw this before. And then your manager got in touch with me, and I'm like, please tell him I just had no idea, like, had a DM through Instagram. I just saw it, and he's texted me there, and that's why I sent you my number. I'm like, dude, I'm not good with the DM stuff, so here's the best way to text me. But I appreciate the hell out of you reaching out to me, and in the past you've invited me to stuff, and it's really nice of you. And I really loved seeing you in Vegas because the stadium stuff is great, but my favorite environment personally as a rock fan for seeing a band I really want to see is in a venue exactly like that, with this, the sound and the stage and everything's right there in front of you, and it's so dialed in. So it was great to be able to finally see you guys live in a setting like that. Even though it was, obviously it's a private thing. Obviously the set was probably a little different, but it was just very, very cool. So I thank you for reaching out, and thank you for the invite.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, I've been wanting to hang for a long time, just because I was such a fan of that metal show, and because it's like, I love, like, I'm a rock and roll geek. I love, like, people talking about, like, their favorite stuff, and then also discovering, new bands and new music too from whatever. And, like, you guys are always, like, checking stuff out, and so I really appreciated that show a lot. I was diehard, watched it every week.
Wow, that's awesome to hear. And I wish we knew. We would have loved to have had you on, because it's funny, man. When I put that show together, I had worked for VH1 Classic as a host previous, and putting that together, the one thing that this is a true story. They gave me a list of names that they had cleared to name the show before it went on the air. And I said, I'm okay with any name except for one. And the name I wasn't okay with is, of course, the name they used, That Metal Show. And people are like, well, why were you against that name? And it was because even though I grew up a huge metal guy and hard rock guy, I knew and wanted to be more diverse. I wanted to do all kinds of rock, and I knew that name may have scared some people away, saying, oh, we're not metal, we can't be on it. Which is why I opened every episode by saying you're home of all things hard rock and metal, because I wanted to set right out front, despite the name, we were going to be welcoming to all sorts of rock acts. So that was, we would love to have had you on, and who knows if one day I can ever figure out a way to get the show back on the air. Maybe we can do that. But I've been doing a daily rock talk show on Sirius XM for about 8 years, and it's been great. And it's great to have these kind of conversations, which I appreciate so much, because, we just shot the shit for over an hour about everything, stuff we loved and what you're doing and all of that. And that's the best format, man. And I really thank you for taking the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, thanks for having me on. And it, like I said, it's been a long time coming.
And you're welcome anytime. And I hope we can hang in person one day because, again, I got a feeling we just scratched the surface on our mutual rock geekness. So hopefully we can hang one day and continue this. And give me your give me your one favorite band that you're listening to right now that you think people should know about.
Oh, there's a band from England. They're called Bad Nerves. And those guys, it's very punk rock, kind of Ramones and the Dickies meets like English punk rock, but I really like those guys a lot.
All right. The Nerves, you said.
Bad Nerves.
Bad Nerves. All right. We'll keep an eye open for them. Hey, man, thank you again. I appreciate it. I'll let you get to your family and stuff there in England, but please stay in touch, and anything we can do for you here on the show, or anytime you want to just call in and shoot the shit or whatever you want to do, you know where to get me, and continued success and safe travels out there.
All right, cool. Well, thanks a lot for having me on, Eddie.
Talk to you soon, Billy. Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye. Well, big thanks to Billie Joe Armstrong of Green Day. Really enjoyed that conversation and appreciate him making the time to join us here on Trunk Nation. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you missed anything, you know the deal. Just go to the SiriusXM app. You can listen all over again and hear the entire show or the interview or whatever you want to do. It's all there for you on the SiriusXM app. Everything on demand to listen to again or whenever you want. Have yourselves a great weekend. I'm back live on Monday. We'll kick off 3 shows from the high seas, broadcasting from the Monsters of Rock cruise, as usual, starting at 3 o'clock Eastern, right here on Faction Talk 103 or the SiriusXM app. Catch you then.
Kiss me.